Hey everyone. Okay, finally getting up part two of this total body ball release. I know in the last video I said we were going to do the full body in one shot, but there's just too many juicy points to get into that I actually think it works a lot better to break it up into lower body and upper body. If you haven't done the lower body one, I highly suggest it. But here comes the upper body. So we're going to dive right into it. Again, all you really need is a ball of some sort. So my preferred balls are the yoga tune-up balls. It's kind of like most similar to a lacrosse ball, bit of a different size. They come in 3 sizes. You can also use a tennis ball, a little bit softer but works quite well. Okay. I'll get into how I like to use the foam roller. Foam roller is not necessary, but as I did for the lower body, I like to use it kind of after to flush everything out. But I do like balls best because they tend to get into those niggly points a little bit more specifically. So we're going to continue on from where we left off with the lower body. So we kind of ended at the glutes and pelvis. So we want to get into the lower back. So grab your ball. I would normally, if you do use the yoga tune-up balls, I usually use the big honker, the alpha ball for this, but I'm going to use the same ball throughout the body because most of you are likely using like a lacrosse or tennis ball, and this is probably the most similar size. So what you're going to do is get on your mat or get on the floor. You want the surface to be relatively hard. Okay, if you find it's too much pressure as we get into some of these points, you can always do it with a cushion between the floor and you, just so that you're absorbing some of the force of the ball. So what we're doing here is I'm putting the ball on my back. I'm going to lift my shirt here so you can see. So if this is my spine, this groove here, I'm in the musculature right to the side of it. So I'm not right on the bone of the spine. I'm not on my pelvis. I'm into the muscle of the low back. Okay, so I'm going to set that there. And then my back's going to kind of naturally arch over top of it. Now you may feel a little bit of a pressure on where the ball is, but there shouldn't be too much weight into it. What I like to do here though is use the legs as a lever to change the pressure in that ball. So what you'll see I start to do here is just rock my knees back and forth. So as I rock them away, the pressure leaves that ball. As I rock them towards, the pressure increases. And you are in complete control of how much pressure you're wanting to give. So as I said for the lower body, this is not like a no pain, no gain situation. You're not trying to pummel the tissue. You shouldn't need to hold your breath or grimace your face. It should kind of feel like a hurt so good, like you're getting into a spot that needs a little love and attention. And all I did there is I just moved it up about 1 centimeter. So as you move back and forth and you feel sort of your muscles sink into that ball or melt a little bit, you're just moving it along its way. And you can normally do about 2 or 3 points in that low back, 3 or 4 points in the low back per side. And then you start getting into your rib cage. So you don't want to go up to where that ball is sitting on the rib cage, at least not yet. Okay, I'm just putting this arm up here out of the way so you can see where the ball is. But you want your body, the rest of you, to be pretty relaxed. You don't want the muscles to feel like they're tensing up under that ball. If anything, you're just really milking the movement and feeling like everything's softening the more that you do this. Okay, so my legs just go back and forth, it feels quite good. What I avoid doing is using the ball where you move your body and kind of massage on it. The foam roller is better at doing more like diffuse tissue massage in my mind. This is for getting it to a point, and then you use your body as the lever to kind of move over top of it, okay? And then obviously we would switch, and I'll show you same deal on the opposite side. So you may see better here. Here's my spine. The ball goes in beside it. Not as low as the pelvis, not as high as the rib cage, okay? You've got a bit of a square here to work with. So ball goes in, try and keep it on your bare skin if you can, not too many layers of clothes. And then just appreciate how it feels side to side and kind of from place to place. You may need to adjust yourself a little bit. So you're not jamming or forcing your back's curvature into it, nor are you like lifting up off of it. Try and keep your neutral spine as best you can and just use those legs to get into the low back. So even though we didn't include low back in the lower body video, mainly because of time, low back's a super important area to get into if you're having any lower body issues. Same with upper body. It's kind of this transition area where the lower body tends to take a lot of heat, a lot of grief for issues going on below it or above it. Okay, so even if this isn't an area of pain, it's a great one to give some release to. So for me, I, knock on wood, luckily don't have any low back issues, but I can definitely feel there's certain points that feel more triggered by this ball than others. And I'm not getting super upset about that. I'm just sort of parking it in the back of my mind to be aware of, okay? And the more often you do this, the more in tune you get with how that changes over time. Is it always the same spots? Is it changing? Are you surprised where you feel it? Are you not at all? See, when I get kind of higher up towards my rib cage, I'm really starting to feel those muscles are quite reactive. They're quite sensitive. It's where the curvature of my spine starts to change, so definitely an area for a lot of people that has some abnormal muscle tone, so a good one to get up and into, and it just feels super good. Super great. Amazing. Okay, so once you've kind of fleshed out that low back, there's a couple ways to do the mid-back. So for people who are quite sensitive through their mid-back or experiencing acute pain, I'll often suggest to do it against the wall because you can limit the amount of your body weight going into it. But just because I'm down here on the ground and I like to just be lazy and not move everything around, I'm going to do it on the ground. I'm going to show you how I do it. So what you're doing is you're keeping the ball same general, what would it be, like your same longitude, same area up and down, so beside the spine in that bulk of muscle tissue, okay? If you go too far out to the side, you're going to be right on the bony part of the rib, which your back probably won't like. Now here, there's a little less tissue to sink into, okay? So if this feels like a lot of pressure, what I'd suggest is you keep your legs away from the ball, and then what you're going to do is use your arm to twist and let your torso rotate over the area of the ball, okay? If that feels like you're not quite getting into it enough and you need a little bit more force, you can use the legs. And it may depend on where in the mid-back you are. So as I reach that ball higher in the spine or in the back, the torque of my arm and torso may get into it more. Right now it's sort of lower mid-back, so using the legs is working quite well for me, and this feels like I'm really hitting a spot that needs some love and attention. Again, it's not painful, I'm not holding my breath, I'm not grimacing. I can just feel like I knock on the door of that discomfort and then I back off, okay? So here you can kind of switch side to side at the same level, and I'd encourage that. It will give you a little bit more information, and I'm not going to switch my body, but I've just moved it to the opposite side of my body. Gives you a bit more information of how one side feels versus the other when you do that switch back real time. So I feel basically nothing on this side of my body at the same level, whereas the opposite side, I felt a ton of tension, which makes sense because on this side in my upper shoulder is where my kind of hot spot for pain and discomfort is, okay? And it's great to see how that relates to what's going on lower down. So again, you just sort of move it up the spine. So as I get a little bit higher here, and this area is tender for me, I'm going to kind of come off the ball so it's not too much pressure. And don't mind me not looking at you. I'm going to use my arm to create some rotation into that ball, but me lying directly over top of it is way too much force. I can feel my whole back kind of resist or spasm to that. So here I'm just using my arm, and I'm kind of just keeping the same consistent weight down on the ball. So I'm not letting my back arch up or the muscles tense up in any way. And I'm figuring out how much weight I can put down into that ball before it gets too uncomfortable. And you can play around with that arm vector a little bit, but essentially the arm is like a lever and the ball is a fulcrum, right? All physics. And I'm just moving my body to change the pressure in that ball. And then same thing I would do the other side, so at the same level. So here, interestingly, because I'm a lot less tense, I can lie right over top of that ball without my back wanting to arch and lift up off of it. And I don't feel nearly the same kind of discomfort or pressure. So here, I could move my torso, I can move both arms at the same time, I can move one over the head and back, but I'm lying frank on the ball, so I don't need to do this like rotational moment. Okay? Does that make sense, hopefully? Really what you're trying to do is just figure out what kind of pressure can my body tolerate on this ball without it having the reverse effect, meaning that it sort of spasms up. Now, as we get higher, now these are going to be different size balls, so not ideal, but if you had 2 tennis balls or 2 of the same balls, as you get higher in the spine, I'd suggest doing both at the same time. It's a little bit easier. So as we get kind of to the upper part of that shoulder blade level, and here I've got the balls both on either side of my spine, so neither of them are on bony landmarks, neither of them are on my shoulder blade. My arm's free, and then I, almost like doing a reverse sit-up, I sort of come back over top of them. And I'm not letting my low back arch, nor am I pushing it down. I'm trying to keep as much of my body relaxed as possible. And I'm just holding the weight of my head in my arms. And I'm on the border of where this becomes a little too intense, but this is an area that is historically and currently a big problem for me. Okay, so now I've just shimmied up a little bit. The balls are a little bit higher, but still not on my spine. And same thing, I'm just letting my head drop down. Now, for here, I can get my head down comfortably, and I'm going to use my arm or arms to release a little bit more in through there. Oh, that's a good one. Ah, don't mind the moans and groans of sweet release. Okay, if that feels a little bit tricky on the neck, you can still keep holding the neck up here and move the arms. If it feels too intense to have both of those there, then I'd say go, this is where you'd want to go against the wall. So the ball goes in the same area and you're using your arm to move and you're leaning into that ball, okay, a little less weight. Now, as we get higher up into the traps, which for a lot of people is a real issue, I just want to show you where this is going. So here's my neck and mid-back, there's my spine. Here's my shoulder blade. You can always feel like kind of the bony spine of your shoulder blade. And you're in this triangle between the two. So right in the meaty part, it's normally where most of us want to dig our fingers into anyway. The ball's going there. Now what you'll find when you lie down is there's really not that much pressure on it just because of the angle of our shoulders. So what you're going to do once you're there is lift up into a bridge. And when you're up in that bridge, you should feel now your weight kind of goes right into that spot. And then usually when that muscle, that area is congested, it's affecting the motion at the neck. So then from here, play around with just rocking your neck side to side. I just need to readjust. You want that ball to sink right into that tissue. Really important here that it's against the skin as much as possible. And I'm just rocking my head side to side. You can try and move the arm as well. This can get a little uncomfortable for people, but feels good, especially as it loosens up. And you'll see here, there's sort of like my arm naturally wanted to stop here. And as I take some deep breaths and the muscles begin to relax, that arm can come down to the mat. And then I can continue with my side-to-side neck motions if I want. I can play around with my arm, woo, that gets it, going across my body. Keep lifting up through your hips to get that pressure into the ball. And then I'm just gently moving my arm back and forth and feeling the muscle kind of move a little bit under that ball. And it feels amazing. Close your eyes, make sure you're breathing. Try and relax as much of that area as possible. For those of you that get headaches, this is a common area to release. I can even feel my like very consistent headache in the background telling me I'm getting into a good spot. Just be mindful that you're not irritating yourself too much. So again, it should not be a hurt so good or a no pain, no gain. Okay, and then you take it over to the other side. And then just make note, how does this feel one side compared to the other? Move your neck around. Move your arm if you can. This one's harder for me to get that arm back, but it's a lot less tender. There we go. Arm is back, and I'm just gonna bring pressure up into that ball, and I can take it off even by moving my hips. So increase pressure, decrease pressure, increase pressure, decrease pressure. And it's this like change, this dynamic movement of either a limb or the pressure into the ball that really helps change the tone of that muscle, much more than just putting a whole bunch of pressure and holding it and waiting for everything to slip away. Okay? Oh, I could stay here for the day. All right, so you're going to use 2 balls again, if possible. If you only have one, totally doable, but just to balance things out, you're then going to bring the ball right to the base of the neck. And most of you who've had massage before have had this area release, your suboccipitals. So with the balls, I find that they can't go right underneath that bone. They go just on top. And you may need to hold them here. Another little clinical trick is if you put them in the bottom of a sock. So if this is an area you consistently need to release through, put these in a sock, 2 balls, tie the sock off, like right over top of the top ball, and that just sort of holds them for you. So again, the balls are sitting right on the bone of my skull, okay? They're not into my neck, but they're right on the bottom of that bone, so you should feel there's a tenderness there. It's called your suboccipital muscles. They tend to be implicated quite a bit with headaches. And for those of you that have forward head posture, so your chin sort of pokes forward a lot, you got tension through the back of your neck. And here I like to just do these quick little oscillations of my head, like look right, look left, look right, look left. These tiny little movements. I'll try and hold the balls with one hand so you guys can see a little bit better. I'll take this hand down, but I'm essentially just moving my head back and forth. Not so successful. I should have brought a sock to put these in. But I think you get the idea. Again, try not to spend too much time here. These little tiny muscles can be really pissed off in a lot of people. And so it is good to sort of create pressure and work through them, but we don't want you, to flare up a headache or a lot of pain. Less is more, but frequency is key. So don't do too much at a time, but try to come back to this as a regular practice. And that's what will kind of kick the habit of these muscles sort of tensing up, or part of the problem, okay? So now I like to take the balls to the face. And it seems kind of ridiculous. I'll do this in sitting. I would normally do it lying down, but just so you can see better. This will seem a bit ridiculous, but we hold often a ton of tension through our face, which really implicates like our neck and shoulder. Actually, I was having like some neck pain teaching last weekend, and I just started doing some release through my jaw and underneath my jaw, and it was amazing how much tighter the right side was that corresponded with that shoulder and how I could feel the relation of that pain. So you take these balls, you can do one at a time or both, and you're essentially just gonna go to the joint line of your jaw, and then you're gonna come forward, almost so you're between like the jawbone and your cheek, right in the meaty part in between. It's called your masseter muscle. And you'll usually find, and I'm gonna come a little bit closer, I tend to find I get, so you guys can see here, I get it in here, and I just create some pressure through that ball. Looks ridiculous, I know. And I can find little trigger points to work through. You can see here, this is not a lot of pressure. Like, I'm not digging it into my face. It really doesn't take too much. And you just work your way down that jaw. Try not to talk as you do it. but your jaw should be relaxed, so your mouth isn't clenched, your teeth aren't clenched. And work that jaw out. And then do it on the opposite side. And see if you notice a big difference from one side to the other. See if it surprises you how tense this area is. And be gentle, okay? It's your face. You don't need to claw at it. But working through the jaw, and if you are a clencher or going through like a lot of stress, this area tends to get a whole bunch of tension in it, okay? You can also take the two balls and come just above your temple. So we're not going right on the temple, but just above it, and working through that muscle, temporalis muscle, okay? Again, for some people can be a real trigger of headaches or tension. Doesn't feel too bad for me here. I don't have a lot of pressure through that ball, but I can definitely feel much more on my right than my left, some tension in there, okay? So the face points, don't disregard them. There's also, you can do on the top of the forehead, you can do in under the eyes, but the main ones I find are in the jaw and just above the temple, okay? So give those a try, and if you do find some real resistance in there, then feel free to work through it. So last squat we're gonna do is into the chest, okay? And when I say last, my goodness, there are like so many other spots you can do. This is just sort of the quick and dirty of where I find most people have restrictions or issues or tensions. So it's not an exhaustive list, but it should at least get you started and give you some awareness about how your body's feeling. So here I'm able to do this lying down because I have the chest of a 9-year-old boy. If you are bigger chested, then you can do this against a wall, or you can also, I find, if you put a pillow and create a little bit of an angle, it creates a little less pressure on your chest and right where we want the ball to go. Or you can put a hand sort of on your sternum to prop you up a little bit. The main thing though is we want to get that ball or pressure on that ball, okay? So I have the ball on my pec muscle, so like your pec kind of runs like this. And so you'll find there's different parts of it, but basically you're staying underneath the clavicle, the collarbone, and in between the shoulder and the sternum, okay? So you're gonna get on the ball, and then what I like to do here is just do kind of snow angel arms, and as your arm comes up, typically, you're gonna hit a line of tension. So for me, it's right in there, and I feel that pressure increase under the ball as I get my arm up. Now, you can just do tiny little swipers once you get to that area where you feel it. You can also try and lift the arm up and come back down. But essentially, you're just playing around like we have with every other area of the pressure that's going into that ball, and you're using movement to create change. Okay, and then you can play around, move the ball a little bit, get a different part of the muscle. You have your pec major and your pec minor. In your pec major, you have different heads. You have a clavicular head. You have a sternal. And basically, everyone kind of has a different spot in that muscle, or those muscles that feel like hot spots. So just work through it. But for those of you who sit a lot at a computer and those shoulders are rounding forward, great to get into this muscle and release it. And then obviously you would do the same on the opposite side. So I'm gonna just do a quick one on this side, loop back to it if you need that more. And then I'm just gonna show you a couple of things on the foam roller that are optional to do as well. I find I actually use the foam roller a lot more for the upper body than the lower body. The foam roller seems to have gotten its fame by rolling the IT band. I find it a lot better for opening up through the chest. I actually do a lot of core work on it. So, you know, use it if you like, but I don't think it's a necessary tool to have, or a necessary piece of equipment. But it is great. Don't get me wrong. So, long foam roller you need for this part. You're gonna come right to the end, you're gonna lie on it, scoot your bum right down so that your head can be relaxed as well. And then from here, what I like to do is keep a nice neutral spinal curve, bring my arms up behind my head, and now that we've kind of released through everything, they'll actually be a lot looser. If we were to do this at the beginning, probably be a lot tenser. But here I like to draw snow angel, okay? So if you're really tight, you'll find you get to a spot and your arms actually lift up or your back starts to arch because you've got a lot of tension through your back or through your chest. And so basically you're just working on this range of motion through your shoulders. That's so lovely for opening up the muscles of the chest wall and the back. And you can see when I get to there, my back does start to want to arch a little bit. I'm not going to push it down into the roller, but I'm just going to get my neutral spine back. Another one seems really basic and easy, but feels really good is just doing reciprocal arms here. So arms move back and forth, or you can go arms out to the side. Is a lovely release. Okay. The other one I like to do with the foam roller for the mid back is turn it horizontally, sort of like what we did with the double ball, putting the balls in the spine, but you keep your back neutral, you keep your spine through your low back not moving, and then you just come back over the roller. And as soon as I feel that my back wants to arch like that, is where I stop. This is where I get to. I let gravity help, and then I use my elbows to slide that roller up a touch, and then same thing here. Back over the roller, and then come back up. And this is a nice release for the mid-back as well. Okay? Now, the other thing I do prefer the roller better to than the ball, you can be the judge, I'll show you both ways, is getting under the arms here, so into the lats, which for a lot of people is an issue, especially if you have shoulder issues. So I find the ball can be maybe a little too pokey for most people, and the foam roller is a little better. So what you do is you kind of get the foam roller in your armpit almost. Try not to sink into it too much, but you want your body to be relaxed. And here I use my hips sit back to increase pressure, and then my hips pop forward to take pressure off. So I'm adding pressure on, taking pressure off. And if you're tender through here, you'll feel this. Ooh, hot little trigger point. You can also do tiny little movements front and back, but I try not to drive the movement with my arm. I want my arm to sink into that roll, and then just play around with where that roll is. But as best you can, use your body to move you. So I'm just sliding back in my hips and forward to change the pressure in that roller, and then I'm going to do it quicker motions. Okay, if you want to, you are so brave, braver than me, you can get the ball in there. I just find it hard to find where I'm not right on my scapula here, right on my shoulder blade, and to get into here and then relax into it. But this is another way that you could do it, right kind of in the armpit there. Okay? But that's a really nice one for the side of the body. And then what I would suggest just to finish up is come and sit so your legs are swiveled like this. Call it mermaid seat, seated position. And then you're going to bend your upper body towards the side where your feet are. And that gives you a nice long stretch in through here. You can let the head fall with that. And then you can swoop your arms around and then swap the opposite way. Bring your arm up and over. Feel a nice, lovely stretch. And then swoop around. Shake it all out. And hopefully you feel a lot more relaxed through that upper body. So you can see if we were to combine the upper and lower body, my goodness, we'd probably be over an hour. But take the points from this that felt really relevant to you. Some spots will definitely have talked to you more than others. Remember those, and remember that a one-off session of releasing through there is really not going to do a lot. So take from it what stood out, and then try to frequently get in there, at least for the next couple of weeks. every couple of days, and you will notice a big difference in just that tissue tone if you can sort of frequently in small bouts get into that tissue. But thanks for joining in, and we will jump back into sort of our regular resistance workouts next week. Bye, guys.